Hello everyone, it's me again, Alan, with another book review, here with Rising Sun, the early war book for Finland, Japan, and the Soviet Union, aptly titled Russia's War with Japan and Finland, 1939 through 1940. This is one of the old version 3 books that was translated to version 4, but you can see because it's so nice and thick. I really do hope version 4 steps it up with the books a little bit. They've been a little bit anemic from what I've been able to tell so far. Now, who is this book for? Well, you're not going to want it as a Soviet player if you're just starting out, because you need hordes upon hordes upon hordes of stuff. And kind of the same with Japan, to be honest. Finland's a bit better in that because they can bring veteran units and are one of the few early war armies that can. Oh, I should also note, I noticed this, I was rewatching my Banzai video in preparation for this. I frequently said Kwantung Army in that. That was me misspeaking the whole time. I meant Kwantung Army. The Kwantung Army was the army in Manchuria of the Japanese, which is represented in this book. The Kwantung Army was the army of nationalist China during the war. I don't know how I got those confused, but now the record's been set straight. So, follow this into Rising Sun. So, you get to see just how gigantic the Soviet Union is. And you guys know me, I skipped the history a little bit because I figure you guys come to me for crunch more than fluff. So, you get to see the Japanese tactics, the Japanese special rule. If you want to see more in depth into this, go ahead and check out my Banzai video. And then you can come right back to this video after you've watched the special rules. They're all the same, except human bullets are improvised anti-tank 4 instead of improvised anti-tank 5. Just because of the difference in early war munitions. And, yep, that is the only difference. And on to the lists. First we have the 3rd Sensha Rentai, the 3rd Tank Regiment, where we get the Chiros with the option of some TKs. The TKs were little tanklets from the Great War, basically. I mean, not quite, but they were based on that design. And actually, so were the Chihas. They were made for that. Or, sorry, Chiros. I sometimes have a little bit of a problem looking over Japanese stuff. Just easily getting it confused. But you can bring up to 3 different platoons per company. And each platoon is going to cost you 180 points for a fearless trained 5-tank unit of Chiros, which for early war I consider really good. As I said in my Banzai review, the Japanese tanks are wonderful for when they were produced. And this is early war, so this is when the Japanese tanks had their heyday. The Chiro had a multiple-person turret, so you weren't facing that problem. The crew wasn't horribly overworked. The firepower is not bad for early war. It's anti-tank 5 with a 4 firepower. Plus you got the rear turret MG and hull-mounted MG as well. So overall, they're not really bad firepower-wise, and then you can bring Chihas for the company commander. Not the actual company commander. It's a weird linguistic thing. So the regimental commander will always be Chiros, but the company commander can be Chihas, which are front armor 2, which for early war is not bad. Really not bad. I mean, you're not going to get anything like a Matilda or a KV in a Japanese list. But you are going to have equivalent armor to your opponents for once. So, if you want to run a Japanese tank force by itself, I would recommend it for early war. So, you move on to the 4th Sensha Rentai, which is Fearless Veteran. Fearless Veteran, I should say. However, they are only equipped with the older Chiros, and they're available in units of 3 rather than 5, but for the same price. Paying a little bit extra for that veteran status, which is hard to come by early war unless you're playing the Germans. And you can also bring light Sencha platoons, which are Hagos, which again are really good, other than the fact that they're one-man turrets, but they're pretty fast, and they're still front armor 1, so, and still AT5. You can't really beat that. Then we move on to the Hohi Chutai, the Infantry Company. So for that, it's actually exactly the same as, what's it called? Banzai. Except for the fact that your infantry are fearless trained, if you choose trained. And that is to represent the better training and better morale of the Kwantung Army. And unfortunately they don't have rifle MG teams. I would have really liked to see that, because as you can see even in the artwork they have up in the front, the Japanese, carried a lot of light machine guns in the Kwantung Army, because it was the best equipped army they had. A lot of this stuff is basically the same as Banzai, but a little bit more expensive, just because, it's early war, so your stuff's actually good. So here's the first completely unique thing to this book. The Keihe Chutai, the Cavalry Company. It's like pretty much any cavalry company. It's fearless veteran, so that's really nice. And they are MG teams, which I do like. Again, that was a pretty well-equipped unit. I would have liked to see a mechanized list in this if that was possible, because they use some German half-tracks at this point. But unfortunately, what are you going to do? They're small little units, but they seem to get the job done. You can also bring them dismounted, which is nice. And you can bring some field fortifications if you feel so inclined. And the usual arsenal, and a little bit of a painting guide. This color scheme, the one with the yellow in it, was mostly used in the jungle. So if you're just going for a Manchurian and you want to be a little bit more historically accurate, use the same painting guide, but ignore the yellow. Because they did use a similar 3-color camo. But it's not necessarily historically inaccurate to have it dressed up the other way. It was done per crew. So now we move on to the Soviet Union. And I'll be looking over their special rules, because I have not covered the Soviet Union extensively yet. Especially not for early war. So the biggest thing is their infantry have a rule called wave attacks. So if you destroy a Soviet infantry company, so that's one of their platoons, you get to mark where they are on the board, and on a roll of a 4-up, they immediately send in another wave, and you get to place your new infantry company right there. It's really powerful, but not as powerful as you might think, because it is a 50-50 chance, and there's only a few companies through the entire list, even if you're playing a huge horde. So, it's good, it's not that great. You can also voluntarily destroy your own units and have them roll, but it's 50-50. So you have dual command, which means your commissars have to be close to your company commanders in order to assign new teams, in order to offer that same reroll. This is to reflect the fact that at this point the Soviet commanders were terrified of giving orders without the approval of his or her commissar, because, Stalin was kind of going around executing people, and that commissar's signature would often be the only thing standing between you and a bullet, because if the commissar signs off on it, they have a vested interest in ensuring that, the order's lawful and it's to the means of the party, etc., etc. So, by having both of your word behind it, you're not as likely to get executed. So, that was their thoughts behind that. Offensive doctrine means it's always attack. That's nice. And, close supervision is the other half of the dual command rule. Sorry, I kind of lumped them into one because I kind of see them as one. Then you've got the unique Soviet tanks of this era, the T-35 and the T-28. Both of them heavy tanks with deck turrets and machine gun turrets, both of which can fire at separate targets from your main unit, and the machine guns can still fire at a rate of fire 3, even if other guns are firing. So that's a really nice boon. However, they do not have coaxial MGs, they have turret front MGs. So basically, it's like a coaxial, except your main gun can't fire at the same time. Not really a big deal in version 4, but a big deal in version 3. And then they also have turret rear MGs, which is nice. It's makes you re-roll your hits in close combat, the enemy. And then you have the T-35, the Land Battleships. So basically, they can be damaged rather than outright destroyed. So you can either damage one and it can't move, or you can bail it out and it can't shoot. However, if it's bailed out, it can still move, and if it's damaged, it can still shoot. So it's pretty cool. It's to represent the fact they were all in different fighting compartments, which is one of my favorite things. The T-35 is one of my favorite tanks from all time, just because it's ridiculous. It had 12 crew members. It was gigantic. It was just an unholy monstrosity. It could shrug off shells from a dozen Panzer IIs, and they would ring it, and it would be firing all of its turrets at them. It's really cool. It's a 5-turreted vehicle. Okay, and then we get onto the actual list. So, to start us off, we have the Heavy Cavalry Battalion, which is Confident Conscripts. So you can choose to either have a BT-5, BT-7, T-2835, T-2838, T-28E, or T-35 for your headquarters, which offers you quite a bit of variety there. You can also add AAMG to any tank that's able to take it for 5 points, or add a turret rear MG to the BT-7 for 5 points. And then you get onto the actual company unit, which gives you the choice between T-28s, including the options for 33s, 38s, and 28Es. The 28Es were up armored, and the 38s were upgunned. I believe the 28E was also upgunned. So basically you can add a bit more firepower for a few more points. Otherwise they're primarily anti-infantry, AT-5, but with a 3-up firepower. Then you have the T-35, which is both anti-tank and anti-infantry. It's quite a nice little all-rounder with its 5 different turrets. It's got 2 MG turrets, 2 anti-tank turrets, which fire AT-7 with a 4-up firepower, and then 1 anti-dug-in infantry turret, which fires AT-5 but with a 3-up firepower. It is a monster, and all these turrets can fire at different platoons if they want. You can also give them an AAMG if you just want that little bit extra DACA. And then we're straight on to the light tank of battalions, which again, Confident Conscript. I believe all these lists are Confident Conscript, so that's nice. So you can either choose a T-2633, a 39, or a T-26E for your company commander. Again, 39 is upgunned, the 26E is up armored and upgunned. So I'd probably take the 26E for your headquarters. And then you can bring positively massive amounts of T-26s, including all the different options for upgunning them or up-armoring them, or even down-gunning them, which is fun. So instead of having a main turret, you'll have 2 machine gun turrets on each one. So that's pretty cool. And they can each fire at separate targets and both have rate of fire 3, so that actually might be pretty good against infantry armies. You do have to take a minimum of 5 of them, however the tanks are only 30 points each. So, or 30? No. Nope. They're 18 points for 5 of them. So, you guys can do the math. I'm tired. It's late. And then you finally get the fast tank of battalion, Confident Conscript. Options of BT-5 or BT-7s. Same with this. No real options for upgunning them because BT-5s were already the up-armored, up-gunned versions. Which really simplifies things. You again have to take a minimum of 5. They were wonderful little tanks. They had the Christi suspension system, so they were really fast. Hence the term fast tankavy. And yeah. You can also bring flame tanks, which is fun, especially in version 4, where you have to take them off, so you can take up to 10 of them, which is ridiculous. And then you can bring the little self-propelled guns on trucks. You can bring little tanklets, which are scouts, but they're not actually recon platoons because of the lack of radios and such. They would just race ahead, and if you heard them engaging the enemy, or if they made it back to you and reported a huge enemy force, then you would know that that's where the battle's going. And here you get the motor infantry platoon, or battalion, the Motorized Battalion, yeah, which has the typical 20-point battalion HQ, confident conscript with a commissar team, and a regular second-in-command. And, oh, it looks like they lumped the command into the battalion commissar team, so that's fun. And then you can add anti-tank guns for 35 points per gun, probably a good investment. And then you got the standard motor rifle platoons. However, these units don't use wave attacks, so that's a little bit of a disadvantage there. But you can bring up to 15 infantry stands for 260 points. I completely misread that. You can bring up to 21 infantry stands for 260 points. That is ridiculous if you're willing to buy and paint and build that many infantry. You get the massive brick of guns you can build. Same with these ones. And finally you get to the Oleksiy Battalion, which is the one that uses actual wave attacks. So it is a little bit more expensive. It's 315 points for 30 infantry stands, which is ridiculous again. So I guess it's not that much more expensive, but you also don't get to add anti-tank guns, so that kind of sucks. And yeah, no, you get just swarms of infantry to send at the enemy. The young men and women of the Soviet Union who are willing to die for their cause, and yes, the Soviet army did have women at this time. I've heard this historical debate come up, is because of a mistranslation error which said that women were not conscripted during this time. However, they were still allowed to serve. There was a mistranslation that said women weren't allowed to serve. Instead, the actual order was women weren't allowed to be conscripted. There's a big difference there. So women were part of the Red Army at this time. Mostly at lower ranks, because there was a lot of sexism at the time. Considering how much sexism there is now in 2018 when it comes to women ascending the ranks, even in the U.S. military, I can only imagine the women in 1938, 1939 trying to ascend the ranks of Soviet Russia. Yeah. And then you can bring big units of HMGs, big units of anti-tank guns, and infantry support guns, and again, little tanklets, which is cute. Oh, it looks like they're actually tractors. Oh, they're tractors. That's cute. So it can just bring stuff. Like it can haul your guns around for you, but as tractors. That's cute. And you have sapper companies to support you, which is cool. They obviously don't use wave attacks because they're specialists. And then you got flamethrowers, but the flamethrowers are a bit overcosted if you ask me. You've got the Cavalry Polk, the cavalry regiments, Cossacks and such. Again, you just bring hordes of horses. 4 cavalry platoons are only 250 points. Each of those are 16 cavalry stands. So that's kind of ridiculous. And same with infantry. Usual. They do have a Tulkas, Tachkas, which were some of the coolest units. They were machine gun units that were on the back of a horse-drawn wagon. And what they would do is they'd send the infantry into an enemy camp, get everybody awake, get everybody riled up, and then retreat the cavalry. And when the infantry came to pursue, they'd use the Talchas to mow them down. Cool little historical fact there. They were frequently used during Operation Barbarossa, because the panzers would outrace the German infantry, and then the cavalry would be brought in against the infantry. It was really effective, and it terrified German commanders. Then you get motorized cavalry companies, which can be issued trucks. Fun fact, most infantry units were faster than the motorized units because the motorized units wouldn't be given trucks or horses, whereas the infantry units would usually be given horses. And then you got guns like usual. And you can bring a tiny little biplane and giant units of armored cars. Usual little Soviet stuff. I use the term little loosely. You can get a little Soviet painting guide. I find the early war Soviet uniform to be absolutely amazing. It's really cool looking. And, again, don't paint the stubble on your women soldiers unless you really want to. And finally you get to the defense of Finland, or Suomi. And you get the hero Simoi. Hey-ha. Hey-ha, yeah. And he, as a sniper, has the most confirmed kills in human history, which is terrifying. And he survived the war and everything, so that's cool. He was known for using his submachine gun, known as I said, I'm right back. So, here you get the Finnish special rules. You get self-sufficient, which gives them German mission tactics, which doesn't matter if you're playing version 4. And then you have hunters, which allows them to move at a faster dash speed or at the double for all their infantry, their man-packed guns, etc., through snow and forests and such. And they have the Sissi, which was the German term for guts, so they get to add one to their counterattack rolls at all times, which means for the most part, your infantry are going to be counterattacking on a 2-up, possibly rerollable. So that's really cool. Your infantry are going to break off. They have the Susi, it means guts in Finnish, so that's cool. Then you've got the cool Moti ambush. You get to add any of your units that are in reserves. When they come out of reserves, can instead be placed in ambush. Any of your units may be put in ambush rather than being deployed on the table at the beginning. Any of your units that are normal ambush may be put in Moti ambush instead. Basically, you can ambush out the wazoo. And basically all the same stuff as normal ambush apply to this. However, you can also melt away with your CC squads. So with that, you basically put things back in ambush rather than shooting if they pass a skill test. However, even if they fail the skill test, you still can't shoot. So it is a bit of a gamble there. And here we have the Yakov V Campaka. Right? Yeah. Yakov V Campaka. The infantry company. There's a little pronunciation guide right here. That's what I was looking at. It is 30 points for HQ, which is a company command rifle team, and a second-in-command rifle team. Confident veterans, which is nice for early war. Then you can bring your little units. They're kind of the same as late war, except they're only confident rather than fearless, because at this point, Finland was a little bit uneasy about facing the might of the Soviet Union. Can't quite blame them. You can bring mortars, machine guns, anti-tank rifles, close defense teams, which are basically sappers. They're anti-tank. And then you can also bring anti-tank guns, of course. And then we have Manna Line Strongpoints, which is awesome. Mannerheim was a World War I, I believe, Finnish hero. And so they named this big defensive line after him. From what I understand, it was somewhere between a line of trenches and the Maginot Line. So, that's that little gap there that historians have been able to pin down. It's so close, that little gap there. Finnish historians will often say it was little more than a group of trenches and some minefields that were, barely able to hold their own and froze over and everything just to make the Finns seem that much more heroic, but I don't think they need any more heroics, because they were already able to do amazing. And then, of course, you have the Soviet, historical sources who say, oh, the Mannerheim line was comparable to the Maginot Line. It was this incredible defensive work. So, the truth lies somewhere in between those two, I'm sure. There were really, really biased histories from that period. So, it's really hard to find something without an agenda. And because the Mannerheim line didn't survive, we don't know too much about it. It's weird to say that about something in World War II, but, whatever. You get your standard little traces for all the different stuff. For Strongpoints, it is literally exactly the same as all the others I've ever reviewed, so it's cool. And now we have the Cavalry Company, which is your scout rifles, which can be replaced with SMGs, because they had the Suomi submachine gun, which was one of the best submachine guns of the war. As I said, the PPSH was based off of it. They are fearless veterans, of course, because nobody screws with the Finns. And you've got, standard little scout platoons, and all sorts of different options. And then you finally have the CC Company. The Guts Company, literally, but Ski Guerrilla Company. Which is basically the normal one, except they can use the Fade Away special rule that I was talking about earlier. So they can attempt to run away after, you've revealed your ambush, shot up the enemy, etc. And you can make them into SMG teams, which is effective, I assume. And you may replace them with close defense SMGs or close defense rifle teams. Both of which would be excellent against tanks, so that's really cool. And then you have the usual divisional support. So you can choose the Pastori Company, or the Pastori Platoon. So you can have Vickers 6 tons, T-26s, or up to 2 T-28s. All of which is appropriately expensive, confident, trained, because these were all captured equipment. Even the Vickers 6 tons they didn't have time to train with before the war. So they're all really new to it. In fact, I would probably rate them as conscripts rather than trained, but it's probably something to do with balance. And then, of course, you have the Pastori Christi platoon, which was their BT-5 and BT-7s, which had their own SMG escorts, so that's really cool. And they are also confident trained. And then you have the different AA guns, the different howitzers and such. Fun fact, some of these AA guns are actually imported from Sweden, and those loans were rarely repaid or even asked to be repaid, so that's cool. Then you also have the Folker CX for your sporadic air support. Fun fact, the Folker CX saw service into the 1950s in the Finnish Air Force, so no matter what period of World War II you're in, the Folker CX is an appropriate choice for your aircraft. And then you get the little painting guide for Finns, which is historically accurate as far as I can tell. And then you get some options for winter battles. It's kind of like night, but instead it's a blizzard. And then you get like a Finnish terrain guide, which is kind of cool. Overall, what do I think of Rising Sun? Well, Rising Sun is definitely an excellent book for getting into early war, especially for somebody like me, who's a bit of a Japanophile, already has a Finnish force, and likes the T-35. So you can imagine I'm not the most unbiased source to review this. However, I may be one of the only reviews on Rising Sun. Sadly, I really wish there were more videos about this. But I think the lists present a good amount of variety and an excellent take on early war. You avoid the German tanks and the French, elite, barely able to slog forward, but at the same time so heavily armored nothing your opponent brings can take it out except the AA guns. It avoids that a lot. Good lists, you can use them for the Japanese list would be perfect against any early war British force, especially to represent the invasion of Singapore and such. The early war American force from Gung Ho. Ignore the Shermans, just bring Stuarts, and you could recreate the Battle of the Philippines to an extent. I really wish they would have brought out like a KMT Kwantung Chinese list, or a Communist Chinese list, or both. That would have been cool to face up against the Japanese, but maybe version 4 will bring that, and I really hope so, and I will be the first to review that book if so. As for Finland, it would be properly historically represented, just fighting Russia at this point. It wasn't a big expansionist power. However, you could also use these same lists for the Operation Barbarossa force, setting aside, of course, the Sissi Company and the Manna Line Strongpoint. And they also released a digital edition to, Barbarossa, the book, which includes a Pastori Campana, which is nice. I like the Pastori Campanas. Overall, I think I recommend this book. I give it the tentative 8.682 out of 10. Alan recommends, tentatively. Anyway, you know what time it is, folks. Like it if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, leave me a comment if you want to feed my ego. And, subscribe if you think it's cool to listen to my voice. I personally think it is cool, as does His Holiness the Pope. I'm going to assume that. I have had no official mail from him to confirm, but until he says otherwise, I'm going to believe it. Anyway, folks, I will see you on the next video. Good night.